Title? She said, "We'll talk when I get back." I made sure that conversation never happened. Part 1 of 8, unique, YouTube-friendly, and shockingly different. From the perspective of a whiny husband, for Reddit Confessions. Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions, where real stories hurt more than fiction. Let me take you right into the moment everything changed. Not slowly, not quietly, but all at once. There were 2 cups on the kitchen counter. Hers was still warm. Mine was untouched. I stared at them like they were crime scene evidence. And in a way, they were. Not because something illegal happened. No, but because something sacred had been broken, and no one even heard the snap. She left the house wearing his favorite color. That deep charcoal blouse I never liked because I never picked it. Because she never wore it for me. She didn't say goodbye. Just grabbed her keys and mumbled, "We'll talk when I get back." But you don't say "we'll talk" to someone you plan to keep. You say it to someone you're preparing to release. And that morning, I felt it. I wasn't being kept. I was being cleared out. She thought I wouldn't notice. She thought I'd just wait. She didn't know that 2 nights earlier, I had overheard her call. She was in the guest room. She didn't know I was still awake, sitting on the stairs, hugging my knees like a child who couldn't sleep through a thunderstorm. Her voice was low, playful, foreign. I'd never heard her like that, not even on our honeymoon. He still thinks it's a retreat. God, he's so soft. Then she laughed. That awful, ugly laugh that makes you feel like you're shrinking right through the floorboards. And then, "We'll talk when I get back." He won't do anything. He never does. She said it like a dare, like a bet, like I was some kind of background noise that couldn't speak up for itself. So no, I didn't wait for her trip to be over. While she was sipping cocktails in another man's arms, I was rewriting the ending to our story. A better one. A louder one. She said we'd talk when she got back. I made sure there was no one left to talk to. To be continued in part 2. Next, he opens her journal and discovers the affair wasn't her first, but it will be her last. Red Square if you've ever felt discarded, underestimated, or quietly replaced. Leave a comment. Red Square subscribe to the channel Reddit Confessions, where the truth never stays buried. Red Square and tell us, what would you have done if you heard your partner say that about you? Shall I continue with part 2? Absolutely. Here is part 2 of the story, written in natural paragraph form, in English, highly intriguing, original, and within the 1700 to 2400 character range as you requested. Part 2. The trip she thought I knew nothing about. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I didn't move. I stood in the kitchen, holding that untouched cup of coffee like it was glued to my hand. It had gone cold, just like everything else between us. I wanted to believe she'd call. I wanted to believe there'd be a check-in, a text, a landed safe message. Nothing came. Hours passed. Then a full day. Silence. But I wasn't surprised. When someone's already emotionally gone, their physical absence is just paperwork. By the second night, I couldn't take it. I walked into our bedroom and just stood there. Her side of the bed was perfectly made, like she hadn't even slept there in weeks, which, now that I thought about it, was mostly true. She'd started falling asleep on the couch, blaming migraines or needing to wind down alone. I used to bring her tea, thinking I was being helpful. Now I realize I was just delivering comfort to someone already halfway out the door. I sat down at her vanity, opened the top drawer, and found a small black notebook. I'd seen her write in it before. Thought it was journaling, healing, private. But something told me to read. My hands shook as I flipped through the first few pages, expecting quotes or affirmations. What I found was a log, dates, names, places. My name was never mentioned. Hers always was, usually followed by initials I didn't recognize. Lunch with P. W. Hotel after. Dancing with L. J. Felt free again. My chest tightened with every line. This wasn't one affair. It was a lifestyle, a second life. She'd been documenting her escapades like they were accomplishments. And the most recent entry? 2 days ago. Can't wait to see Byron. Trip excuse worked perfectly. Lowell suspects nothing, poor thing. My name. Right there. Poor thing. like I was a stray she occasionally fed. I put the notebook down. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the part of me that could still cry had just shut down. What replaced it wasn't anger. It wasn't even revenge. It was a decision. She thought we'd talk when she got back. But by the time she returned, I would be gone. Not just physically, but from every part of her life she thought was still hers. Would you like me to continue with part 3? Part 3. I wasn't leaving. I was erasing myself. By morning, the weight of the notebook still pressed on my mind like a stone on my chest. I hadn't slept. The pages ran through my head in loops. Initials, locations, fake apologies to herself in ink like, I deserve happiness. And, he'll be fine. He's stronger than he looks. I sat at the edge of our bed, not hers anymore, and stared at the walls we'd once painted together, the curtains she picked out, the photo frames we never updated. The entire room was a museum of a marriage already decaying behind glass. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to tear things off the wall or set fire to her closet like some emotional pyromaniac. I'd lived too many years trying to be the understanding one, the fixer, the patient listener. I didn't want to become someone else. I just wanted her gone. Not just out of the house, but out of the very story she thought she was still controlling. So I started small, methodical. I opened our joint banking app, changed my passwords first. Then, one by one, I began quietly untangling myself. The car was in my name. I moved the title over. The utilities, the subscriptions, the emergency contacts. I removed her name from everything without making a sound. The landlord owed me a favor, so I asked if I could end the lease early. I told him it was personal. He didn't ask questions. He never did. I left our wedding album on the living room table, closed, with a sticky note on the front that read, "Nothing was fake. You were just never honest." Then I boxed my things. Just one suitcase. Essentials. Nothing more. I didn't want souvenirs from a lie. I didn't want the coffee mug she got me in Chicago or the hoodie she always wore when she pretended to miss me. I wanted clean air and an exit. There was just one thing left to do, one more nail in the foundation she thought was stable. I opened her laptop and scheduled an email. Just one. It would hit her inbox 30 minutes before her plane landed back home. The subject line was blank. The body of the message was short. You said we'd talk when you returned. I returned everything instead. L. She would walk into an empty apartment. No pets. No keys. No me. Only silence and a cold wedding album waiting to testify. She told someone I'd never do anything. That I'd stay no matter what. She was half right. I didn't do anything loud. But everything I did was final. Would you like to continue with part 4? Part 4? She walked into silence, and I watched from a distance. I waited 2 blocks away the morning her flight landed. It wasn't planned at first. I told myself I was already done, that I had let go. But some part of me needed to see it. Needed to watch her walk into the aftermath of what she thought she was controlling. Maybe it was selfish. Maybe it was weak. But after years of being invisible in my own marriage, I wanted to witness the moment she realized I wasn't a fixture anymore. I was gone. I parked outside the diner across the street from our building. Her building now. I didn't even order anything. I sat by the window and stared like a ghost haunting his former life. My phone was off. The email had already sent. The key had been left on the windowsill. The apartment was stripped of me. She arrived just after 9 a.m. Still in travel clothes, hair in a tight bun, dragging her suitcase like she hadn't slept. She didn't look around, didn't glance up at our window. She typed the code at the front entrance, stepped inside, and disappeared from view. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. I pictured her walking through the living room, scanning for signs of me. Shoes, backpack, my cologne bottle by the bathroom mirror. I imagined her noticing the emptiness. The box of her notebook left open on the kitchen counter. The wedding album with the sticky note I left on the cover. I imagined her face, cycling through confusion, irritation, disbelief, then finally, panic. Then I saw her. She rushed back outside, phone in hand, staring at the screen like it was lying to her. She stood on the sidewalk, looking around in circles. Her lips moved. She was talking to herself. She was calling. Probably me. But the number had already been disconnected. My voicemail was full. And I had no interest in hearing her voice anymore unless it came with something she hadn't offered in years. Truth. She stood there, frozen, and I realized something. She wasn't crying. She was angry, not heartbroken, just furious that I had taken away the chance for her to control how it ended. She thought I'd wait, that I'd sit on the couch like a loyal dog, ready for whatever scraps of affection she decided to throw my way after her trip. But the leash had snapped. She walked one direction. I walked the other, and I never looked back. Shall I continue with part 5? Part 5. The people who knew her didn't know her at all. 2 days passed before the messages from mutual friends started flooding in. Not to my phone, but to my email, which she must have given out in a panic. I didn't respond to any of them, not even the ones pretending to be neutral. There is no neutral when someone's been living a double life for years. There's only who knew, who didn't, and who pretended not to. Still, I read every message. Curiosity. Closure? I don't know. But I needed to understand who she really was through someone else's eyes. One of the first was from her coworker Becca, the one who always brought us wine at Christmas and complimented our perfect marriage at every office party. Her email read, "Lowell, I'm shocked. I don't know what happened, but Jessa is devastated. She didn't see this coming. Please talk to her before things get worse." Worse? For who? I laughed, and I hated that I did. Not because it was funny, but because people like Jessa had trained the world to believe they were the ones being wronged, even when they were the ones swinging the blade. That was her talent, making everyone else feel responsible for the fallout of her choices. But the message that gutted me came from someone I hadn't expected. Her younger brother, Eli. He was always a quiet guy, kept to himself, but over the years we'd bonded over classic horror movies and our mutual fear of social events. His subject line was just, "I owe you the truth." His email wasn't long, but it was enough. He told me he'd seen Jessa out with someone else a year ago. He said he didn't know if it was serious, but it felt off. She told him it was none of his business and threatened to cut him off if he ever brought it up again. And he didn't. Until now. He ended the message with something I didn't expect. "You deserved more. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I was scared of her too." Scared. That word sat with me all night. Not sad, not confused, scared. And it made sense. Jessa didn't just lie. She controlled. She rewrote reality and made everyone around her live in it. And I had been the longest, most loyal character in her fiction. But not anymore. I found a new place. Nothing fancy, just a small rental above a bookstore, with creaky floors and a window that overlooked a quiet alley. It smelled like old paper and dust, but it was mine. Mine without conditions. Mine without watching my words. She still didn't know where I was. That part gave me peace. And then, just before I went to bed, I received one last message. No subject, no greeting, just one sentence. "We need to talk." It was from her. But that talk she wanted? It was never going to happen. Would you like to continue with part 6? Part 6. Her truth arrived too late, wrapped in guilt and damage control. I didn't open her follow-up message right away. I saw her name in my inbox and just stared at it, feeling that old reflex kick in. My chest tightening, stomach dropping, fingers freezing just above the mouse like I needed her permission to breathe again. But the difference now was that I didn't care what she had to say. Not really. I wasn't hoping for closure or an apology. I knew whatever words she sent would be carefully chosen, rehearsed, and stripped of anything real. Still, I clicked. Her message began with what she thought was vulnerability. "I never meant for things to go this far." That line alone made me laugh. She acted like our marriage was a candle she forgot to blow out, not a forest fire she deliberately set and watched burn for years. She rambled about feeling suffocated, about how she lost herself in the roles of wife and partner, and how the affair wasn't really about love, it was about escape. Then came the classic, But I always loved you in my own way. Her own way. Jessa's way of loving was the kind that made me doubt my gut, question my memory, and apologize for things I didn't do. It was silent treatment passed off as space, disappearing for hours without explanation, and making me feel like the villain whenever I asked for basic emotional presence. So no, if that was love, I'm glad I was finally unloved. She ended the email with a plea. Let's just talk, not to fix things, just so I can explain. But I didn't owe her that anymore. She'd had 12 years to explain. Now, every word she tried to force into the air between us felt like a negotiation she no longer had the right to make. I wasn't interested in her version of the story. I'd lived it. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a private folder on my laptop I hadn't touched in years. It was full of drafts. Letters I'd written to myself late at night when the loneliness got so loud I thought it might swallow me. I read them one by one, and with each paragraph I saw it clearly. This didn't begin with her affair. It began the first time she dismissed my feelings with a sigh. The first time she laughed at me in front of friends for overthinking again. The first time she said, "You're too emotional, Lowell. Toughen up." Her betrayal didn't hit like a sledgehammer. It was a slow drip, a hollowing out. Now, for the first time, I felt full. Not of rage, not even sadness, just clarity. She wanted to talk, but she was years too late. Shall I continue with part 7? Part 7. She showed up, but I wasn't there to watch her shatter. 3 days passed after her email, and when I didn't respond, she tried calling from a blocked number. I didn't answer. Then another message landed in my inbox. Shorter this time, but somehow more desperate. She said she was coming by the apartment that weekend. Not to fight, just to see if you're okay. That was laughable, considering she hadn't genuinely asked if I was okay in years. I didn't bother telling her I no longer lived there. That was the point. Let her show up to the echo chamber she helped empty. Let her walk into a space scrubbed clean of my presence and filled only with the consequences of her choices. I wasn't going to hand her a final scene where she could play the victim. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a tearful confrontation. I was already gone in every way that mattered. Saturday came and went. I didn't have to wonder what her face looked like when she opened the door to that quiet apartment. My landlord texted me later. "Hey, that woman you warned me about? She came by. Looked like she got hit by a truck. Just stood in the middle of the room for a long time, not moving. Didn't say a word." I thanked him and turned off my phone again. But I'll admit, that night, I sat on the floor of my new place with a single lamp on and tried to picture her standing there. I imagined her calling out my name into the silence, waiting for a reply that would never come. I pictured her finding the single framed photo I left behind. Us in Colorado, her laughing with her head tilted back, my arm around her waist. I'd left a sticky note on that one too. "This version of you was real. I just wish it lasted." She had spent years rewriting history, erasing her cruelty with flowers, her distance with "I've just been stressed." And I had spent those same years swallowing my instincts and letting her shape my reality. But now I was the one holding the pen. The silence was mine. The ending was mine. She might still try. She might send more emails, show up at places I used to go, ask around. But the version of me who would have responded, who would have broken down just to be heard, was gone. That version of me died quietly, in that empty bedroom, holding a notebook full of strangers' initials. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Would you like to continue with the final part 8? Part 8. I didn't burn the bridge. I simply walked away from it. The last time I saw her wasn't in person. It was a photo. Someone sent it anonymously to my work email. No message, just an image. Jessa, sitting alone on a park bench downtown, her head in her hands. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her own choices had finally caught up and had nowhere else to land but her own shoulders. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity. I felt distance. The kind you earn when you've fought like hell to untangle yourself from someone else's chaos. By then, my life had already begun to take a different shape. I'd started journaling again. Really journaling, not those desperate, midnight scribbles from the past. I joined a local photography group. I met people who knew nothing about my marriage, and for the first time in a long time I got to show up as just me. Not someone's husband. Not someone's emotional punching bag. Just Lowell. It wasn't a dramatic reinvention. I didn't run off to Paris or shave my head and start a podcast. I just stopped waiting for someone to return what they'd taken from me. I stopped needing closure from someone who had built a home out of secrets. And slowly, I started feeling like I wasn't just surviving my past, but building something entirely separate from it. I still think about her sometimes. That's the truth. Not with longing, but with understanding. Some people don't know how to love without control. Some people don't know how to stop themselves from breaking the very things that once saved them. But I do. Now I do. The story ended without screaming matches, without revenge. She came back expecting to finish a conversation she thought she controlled. And instead, she found silence. A silence filled with my healing. I didn't burn the bridge. I just walked across it one final time and never turned around. Hi, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment where you quietly walked away instead of reacting with rage? Was there a time you left before you were pushed? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true stories just like this one. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Just leave and begin again. Would you like me to now write the YouTube title, description, and thumbnail text for this story?